Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Society Pod. My guest has been working in the intersection of fitness, financing, and tech for the last 20 years. He's the co-founder and managing member of SageHouse Capital, as well as SageHouse Advisors. He's also the co-founder of a new boutique concept and digital training platform called Proof3. Welcome to the show, Jim Crowell.
I appreciate you having me. And for you to say that I'm in the tech space is probably kind of you. I certainly have an idea around the financing of the technology space, but those folks are smart. So
you're tech adjacent, we'll say.
I think that's fair.
He's tech adjacent, and he funds and has worked and supported and advised a lot of technology companies. We'll go with that.
Certainly not in the engineering of said technology companies. That's for sure.
Okay, well, so I botched your intro a little bit. How else would you fix my intro? How do you introduce yourself?
No, I think it was really good. I just don't want people to give me credit that I don't deserve. We do a lot of work in technology. We have a holding company that our top goal is to make sure that we help fitness and wellness founders. So we are only in the fitness and wellness space. And we've done maybe 30 deals in the space where, we have typically been an early stage, smaller investor in these folks. And then we help them as much as we can. There's been groups that we have done just pure consulting work with, which is always fun. And then this Proof3 concept is something we've poured a whole bunch of time and energy into over the past couple of years, and we're about to get that in the water now with the first facility in Scottsdale.
I love that you're so casual with 30 or so projects, in the fitness and tech space, just casually investing and selling companies. So tell me about Proof3. Give me all of the details here, because I know a little bit about it, but what's the core offering?
Core offering is strength and longevity. So it has to start there. And the bet that we're really making is that we can prove that we can get people stronger for longer. That's the pure tagline that we're going with. So we built a number of pieces of technology to have a really comprehensive fitness assessment. I do not want to call it medical. It's not that, but it's a really comprehensive fitness assessment. And that assessment can be done in 12 minutes on your own. And so there's a really key element of reassessment that we think we've removed the friction points from to get people, regular people, to want to understand where they really are. And we think we've simplified that experience a lot, where they will get really important information without feeling overwhelmed by it. The methodology of the training is strength training and aerobic work at the end of the day. So it's our Proof 360 classes is a 60-minute class, our flagship class. It's 30 minutes of progressive strength work. So you will squat, you will bench, you will deadlift, you will do all those things. But then you go do 30 minutes of either mixed modality aerobic work, so multiple elements, or you might do biking, rowing, etc. But it's kind of different in how we deliver that. But there's always going to be an element of strength and always going to be an element of aerobic work, because at the end of the day, that's the scientific literature that would suggest that gets you the best results. And then for everybody, they also get a human coach offline, or technically online, right, outside of the gym, to really help with nutrition and habits and lifestyle. So we're trying to put together a comprehensive platform for people to get better longer term results.
I think what you're saying about the simplicity of the metrics, and I know you're in the wearable world, and so we have access to all of this information about our resting heart rate, our heart rate variability, calories burned, steps walked, and yet the more information we have as a society about our health, the worse our health seems to be. And so I think it's great that you're approaching it from a let us do the aggregating on our level and feed it back to you as a participant on a very simple and actionable level.
That is absolutely the goal. I think that at most people's core, they want to look good, move well, feel healthy, feel strong, feel capable, right? Much of that is, what do I feel like? And so if you cloud what somebody feels like with a whole bunch of data they don't understand, you kind of miss the point. And so the data really, really matters for what they should do about it, but getting them to do it is a very, very different journey. And so, you've seen this forever as well. We need to make it both simple and nudgeable, where it's I want to give you something that makes you feel a particular way, to get you to do a particular thing the next time you show up to class. If you are like, we have a really comprehensive assessment. So you're going to do a body scan, a full-on movement assessment through computer vision, and then an entire strength and power test. And then we pull all of your wearable data in, and all that gets mixed up together in our AI systems to help you understand where you are, what you need to do. And then the coach is there to make sure that it's like, let's calm down. It's all good. Here's what we want you to do about it. And ultimately, we want the classes to be the bulk share of what they do about it. Because I can get you stronger, I can get you more aerobic. All of those elements are going to help with body composition, with your movement capability, your strength and power. And then when it really comes time to, well, hey, this thing is wrong, right? This is not working for me. Then I think it's really important that there is a human element to help you with that outside of the gym, and a great referral system for if there is something medical that comes up. That's not our world, right? But we will get you to the right place or help you get to the right place. Here's a great example. My dad is 76. He's, for lack of better term, been in pretty decent shape forever. He plays golf all the time, and he's been in pretty decent shape. He came in, he did our assessment, and the body scan said, we're not going to score you because we think you have edema. And he's like, whoa, I've never been told that by a doctor. Nobody's ever brought that up. And so we're sitting there going, okay, let's do another test to make sure that this makes sense. But if it comes time for him to go to a doctor, we refer out. We just need to be the helpful tool for people to have a general understanding of where they are, and we need to build a good enough experience and connection point and community where people want to keep coming back. To me, it's how simple can you make it with all of that information?
It also sounds like you're a friendly bridge into a medical practice where someone might go to their general practitioner once a year. And so you don't have your finger on the pulse of your biomarkers. You don't have your finger on the pulse of like, where am I from a holistic health perspective? And so it's almost as if like you're putting an offering together that is a more frequent touch base with someone, not just from a weight loss perspective. Like we're going into New Year's and everybody's like focused on the pounds and the scale, but you're really looking at it from a more holistic place and able to like support someone more frequently throughout the calendar year.
Exactly right. We have a very strong conviction that if we can get the normal metrics to improve, which by the way, that's why there are human coaches in the loop, so that they can help you do it without you worrying about all the bells and whistles of why you're doing what you're doing. We think that is extremely important for somebody to feel connected to a particular pathway for a longer period of time. So yes, our classes need to be really fun, but if we don't prove that we can get you results, we'll lose. But I think what's really interesting about all this is we don't want to be medical, but we absolutely want to open people's eyes about how things connect. And so we're doing that not only with theoretically intelligent systems, but we're doing that with a human who we then on our back end, we give that coach a whole bunch of helpful information to have a better conversation with you. So all of our technology that we've built in theory is a hospitality tool at the end of the day to do exactly what you're describing, which is make you stay interested in a long-term consistent fitness and wellness plan. And I think for all of us in the industry, we're like, yeah, that's what you need, right? Like you don't need to go crush yourself for 3 months only to then not work out for the next 2 months, only to then eat your way to the holidays. And it's like, how do we get people to be consistent? We believe, our deep conviction is like, be consistent in training, be consistent in good food, be consistent in walking outside. Like those are simple, but they're not that sexy. So we got to make sure that we have a really good way to keep you connected to that. Therein lies our bet on the technology side.
Okay, so you're tech adjacent as we defined, but you're talking pulling wearable data into AI tools and having apps available for your members. And so where do you see the balance between digital land and in-person land, whether it's through proof3 or whether it's in the industry as a whole? Because the two definitely have been evolving fast over the last few years.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think there are different realms of digital connection points. And I think it's really important that they stay separate. So for example, I think if a lot of people hear you say digital, I think a lot of people might think classes online. I think a lot of people might think wearables. I think a lot of people might think digital coaching or nutrition. So there's a lot of buckets of digital. We are certainly playing in the world where we want a very good digital relationship with our customers. We don't want to be the best at delivering a video-based class solution. We don't think we're going to beat Peloton. We don't think we're going to beat, some of the other brands. And that's not our strong suit. But we do believe that we can build far stronger coach-based relationships with people digitally. And in my opinion, it requires two sides of the coin to make that work. You need an experience and an environment for the client or the member to feel great about that interaction online. And you need a scalable, efficient, and good platform for the coach to engage with people online. So a lot of brands that have tried to do this in the past have had very inefficient ways of communicating and understanding what's happening with their customers. That's what we built, was in a big business model-esque way of saying, we need a platform that makes things far more efficient so that we can get to the price point that we want, so that people will get all of this really important stuff without having to upsell, right? We'll find out how much people resonate with that. But we've seen this world for a really long time. We have a pretty good idea of what classes people like. We have a very good idea of how much time people are willing to spend on something like a monthly assessment. So for instance, our assessment is down to 12 minutes without a human. So it's not an hour, it's not expensive, it's technology that exists. We've woven that together in a platform. Your question on wearables, I think, is really important, where we have a partner, I'll just name them because I think they're great, right? Rook, that does aggregate all wearable data and helps us understand what's going on. We take that information and put it into our AI systems, because I'm not going to build a better version of Rook, right? So I want to lever the best pieces of technology into a very unique experience that benefits all the stakeholders. So member, coach, GM, and then ultimately the business.
Okay, I'll come and visit the new facility, twist my arm. Where did the name come from?
This was through a lot of iterative process. We're almost 2 years, we are 2 years into really thinking about this concept. It was very quiet for a very long time while we were trying to really hone it in. When we started to think about naming and the brand, what was really important to us was outcomes. We are not going to just be an entertainment style of fitness and wellness, although we know it's really important. So we've got to be intriguing and entertaining to a degree. That doesn't matter to us unless people get tangible results. And so the idea of proving results was incredibly important to us. If I'm being honest, in a very public forum, the number 3 has like 8 different significances to it. Early, it was very much about, we were going to do strength work and we were going to do easy aerobic work and hard aerobic work, because all the science would say that's really, really important. It was also about the member, the coach, and the gym all being in harmony in all of this. And then you can imagine there's 4 or 5 different reasons why the 3 matters a whole lot. But proof 3 really stemmed from that. And then, you have a very cool audience of people who are thinking about how to put this into practice, like in reality. We also could buy the URL proof3.com, and that was pretty helpful, right? So, It matters.
Domain name availability is huge. How are you thinking about the expansion of Proof3? Are you thinking about franchising it? Are you thinking about licensing it? Or are you really just focused on getting location number 1 off the ground and then play it by ear?
Well, you know me pretty well, and I like to build a spreadsheet. And so we've thought a lot about how this expands, and especially for who I believe the audience listening to this is, this has been pretty difficult, frankly, to get from step 1 to just opening the gym. And so some of the reasons why it's been difficult, if you would have asked me 18 months ago what we were going to do, I would have said, we're going to put 2 or 3 of these corporately owned locations in the water and then franchise the living hell out of them. But fast forward to a lot of realities hitting, and in my opinion, I want to figure out how to effectively finance all corporate stores, because I think that the experience and the brand that we want to grow for a long period of time is going to require a level of consistency and quality that, if I'm being frank, I don't want outside groups to screw up. And that's not to suggest that there aren't outstanding franchisees. It's to suggest that I want us to be ridiculously tight at the corporate level before we'd even entertain something like that. So I will never take franchising off the table, but the systems are going to have to be ridiculously duplicatable. And I don't think that we will know that for a few years.
Yeah, you know the push and pull because it's you could expand this offering to so many more people if you add locations into the mix. And I believe you could, especially with your skill set, put together an operating manual that would give you those guardrails to ensure the consistency. But I see what you're saying, and I think there are a lot of brands that get to even 20 corporate owned, and that's when they feel like we have it on lock. It's evolved. We know exactly what it is. And it's not just proving the concept via franchising or proving the concept on the fly, but it's really like we as owners have proven the concept, and now you can jump in as franchisees.
Yeah, I can be fairly optimistic. And so I think in the process of putting this all together, a lot of realities just hit. So, for example, I looked at a lot of FDD docs, and I frankly just don't trust hardly any of them, right? Because they just give you such wild ranges of price points. And so when I was thinking about what I expected it to cost to build out a facility, that got way more expensive as you added layers of middlemen and women into the mix, right? And so I don't want to take for granted any part of start to finish what's required to win in a facility. So until all of those aspects really are done for you, I don't think that's a good franchise. Now, maybe I'm being a little bit utopian, right? But I just think too many people have been burned on franchises that aren't good enough, and they're using the franchise model to scale up for their benefit. I'm just not okay with that for us. I think if we get it right at the corporate level, we can figure out how to effectively fund it to really get a lot more corporate stores in the water. And assuming that those are successful, we'll always have the option to do it at that point.
I think all of this is great, and I look forward to seeing how you decide to grow it, whether via franchising or via corporate owned. And it sounds like you're really bringing one percenter kind of tools down into a more approachable and accessible place, and hand holding someone through the process of learning what and where they should be on their own health journey. So I think it's super important work that you're doing. We're obviously cheering for you very hard in this expansion.
Well, I appreciate it. And your skill set is one we always need to get better and better at, that's for sure. I want to make one caveat point is I think that what was 1% tools will be completely ubiquitous across the entire world, particularly as Apple continues its foray into the health space. And so I believe that everybody should have not just access, but a good experience around this type of maybe data visualization, if I'm going to call it something. But I think that at the end of the day, what they need to be doing is very relatable. They need to move more. They need to build strength. They need to eat real food. None of that shifts. I think there is an elegant way of bringing those two things together for the masses. So that's the question that we're seeing if we can solve for. Can we bring, and keep in mind, we're a premium brand, right? So we're not $100 a month, that's for sure. But we're in the couple $100 a month for all of that experience. We need people to feel great about it. Can we bridge that gap into the masses? We'll see.
So you're kind of transitioning to where I wanted to go with this interview, because you're so tied into the industry as a whole and like what's happening in this space, whether it's the one percenters or the wearables, or like who's moving and shaking. And so we're recording this mid-December, and so we're in this like look back period from 2024. As you look back, what do you see as important either news stories or mergers or pieces of tech that have come out? Like what catches your eye in your look back?
You always have to remember I'm a little bit biased because our investments are typically quite early stage, even proof3, so they're quite early stage. So I'm paying a lot of attention in what ideas begin to arc up right? So it's like they're not going from 750 million to 2 billion. They're going from zero for all intents and purposes to a couple million a lot of times. And then some of the companies we've owned for long, not owned, but invested in for longer, they might be getting up into that 9-ish figure range. I think the keys for 2024 were that proper business models and revenue streams got funded and prayers didn't. And I say that to invite a little bit of like, what? But what I mean by that is there's been a lot of really good technology that's been built that doesn't have a business use case. And that was getting funded in 18, 19, 20, 21, and early 22. I'm not seeing that get funded very often now by groups. And so you need to be more than a smart idea. You need to be a product that actually has a business use case that solves a problem for people so that you can get the early customers in so that you can then expand on the benefit and the impact that you have on your particular target market. It's very clear that undefined models are not going anywhere right now. And I unfortunately suspect that there's going to be some very interesting ideas that don't make it in the next 6 to 12 months. And I know that that's kind of common all the time, but there's a lot of companies that I have seen for the last couple of years raising money that are now raising money again. And it's like, you're still in the same spot, which is unfortunate. Some of the stories that really caught my eye was a Solid Core acquisition at least theoretically, quite a large number, right? Obviously, they're one of the creme de la creme in the industry, but it certainly suggests that the groups that bought them see significant growth in the future, significant strength, particularly around the Pilates space, and real unit economics of that particular business. So that was a big one. I'm not going to name names here, but I'm laughing because I know the deal structures on certain deals that were very publicized. And I'm thinking a lot about smoke and mirrors at the end of 2024, where I'm really trying to understand what's true and what's publicized and what's not true. And I'll just say this outright again, not naming names, but I've seen a number of public deals advertised that didn't actually happen. And it's like, whoa, that's interesting. That's probably not a good idea at the end of the day. And so there's been a lot of those that have come across my desk where I've been like, didn't they do a deal? And then I find the deal. It's like, well, they definitely didn't do a deal. So anyways, I'll leave that at that.
So, where you say proper business model, like, are you looking for existing revenue streams? Are you looking for scalable revenue streams? Are you looking for booked business or committed business that might just not have hit revenue yet? Like, how do you define? You use the term proper business model. And so how do you define that?
As an investor, I want my cake and eat it too, right? Where I would love to have all of those things and pay a low valuation price for it, right? The way that I would define a business model, and let's say maybe one that hasn't been fully solidified yet, right? You have a particular product that likely has maybe if the word is expected, has an expected way of being sold and duplicated and serviced. And then there's a potentially expected financial structure that either works or doesn't. And then you can scale up because of that financial structure and duplicatability. Some of the best businesses in the world create a new business model because they have a piece of technology that is so strong that they can get a different business model into the market. What most businesses do, though, is they use sort of a framework for an existing business model, which would be, I'm going to do this kind of selling into this particular market. I'm probably going to have a conversion of these number of leads to prospects to sales. I'm going to have this sort of retention. All of that's going to cost me an amount of money. And then I'm going to have a team that's servicing the rest of the business to make sure that the business grows. If you don't have clarity on how that's going to work, it's very difficult to scale up. So if you don't know which sales channels you're going through, very difficult to scale up because you can't hire a team in to do it. If you don't know which marketing channels, generally speaking, are working, you can't put resources and dollars to those channels. And if you don't have an idea of how effectively your product or service has retention, good luck, scaling it up because you're just churning too many people out. So let me give you an example. The investment markets love vertical SaaS. And for those people who aren't familiar, vertical SaaS looks something like gym management software. okay, where what you're looking for is a piece of business software that services businesses that then those businesses use the software to service their clients. Why do investors love vertical SaaS? Because their business model suggests that if they acquire a client, they stay forever. Really high retention, really high what are called switching costs, meaning if you are on that platform, good luck getting out, right? It's very difficult. And so those are great advantages for a vertical SaaS business model. If you look at direct to consumer, there are all kinds of hodgepodge business models people are trying to go with. So it's a lot harder to understand what somebody has until you can identify what their business model is most like. So a lot of the early SaaS companies, let's call it in the mid 20 teens, right? They started using freemium, right? So, hey, come in, you have a trial version of this product. And then you got into like the Slacks of the world where it's like, you can do it for free forever. But the moment you want this particular feature, now you pay. These are all versions of business models. When you do something that is new, it's very hard to prove. And if you can't show an investor how you duplicate that entire cycle that I described, it's very, very, very hard to get groups of investors behind it.
Does it matter to you as an investor if that cycle has one revenue stream or if it has multiple revenue streams? Like, how do you think about a layered kind of business? Do you like to see it in like as a simple straight line? There's one main moneymaker?
It's a really good question that I'm going to start by saying it depends, but let me try to give a little bit of color around it. And part of this is bias depending on what stage I'm investing at. So if I'm investing in a very early company, in 90+% of those examples, I want them to be ridiculously focused on one particular pathway. And so what we hear often from people pitching to us is, we can go B to B or we can go D to C. It's like, but which one? And what I'm looking for is both conviction about why a particular pathway works better and proof. And so oftentimes the reason why people have two different pathways is because neither one of them is working very well. And so I'm looking for where the most high certainty pathway is, but the later that you go, generally speaking, they have proven a pathway, and so you would then add an additional pathway as you have the resources to properly add an additional pathway. So it really depends. Each company is unique and different, and there have been a few companies where I've said, okay, go test B2B and D2C because you're still learning. You've got a product right now, you don't necessarily know which way is best, but you can't invest millions of dollars into both of them until you have provable metrics to suggest one is working really, really, really well.
It makes total sense. And it's super interesting just how you look at businesses versus how a consumer looks at businesses. What are you watching as we're heading into the new year? Are there certain companies that you're watching? Are there certain slices of the industry that you're watching and are really hyper focused on at SageHouse?
If I'm being honest, we're putting a whole bunch of time into proof3 right now. And so we are still looking at companies. We have made a couple investments in follow-ons in 2024. We would expect to do the same in 25. But a lot of my brain is in how do you reimagine a brick and mortar gym fitness and what's that going to look like? So biasly, a lot about that. If I go put my true and early stage investor hat on, I think you're going to see a lot of friction removed on the product side for what used to be invasive. So think continuous glucose monitors that don't require a pinprick. Think really interesting medical diagnostic testing through your cell phone. Think a whole bunch of interesting products that theoretically have wildly impactful outcomes because the technology is now good enough and the data sets are big enough to show I can do this without it being nearly as invasive. I mean, again, I don't view us as a true tech company at this point, but even look at what we did with our assessment. We took 4 majorly important elements, and one of those 4 elements is wearable data. So you could say that that's 50 elements in and of itself. We took all of that and put it into a 12-minute assessment. That in and of itself is just massively friction reducing. I think you're going to see that across the industry in 25, really. And I think Apple's going to come out with, like they typically do, a number of new features that are non-invasive that are going to get a lot of people using it because so many people have Apple Watches. So that's probably my top one, but can hit it in others if you want.
No, I love that. I know that you're obviously someone who practices what they preach, and we're heading into resolution season. Are there personal resolutions that you have, or even professional resolutions that you have that you want to share?
I'm a weird guy at the end of the day, and I've never really been a resolutions guy because I don't like the idea that I do something for a short period of time. I'm a very boring, like brick by brick by brick by brick guy. And until I believe strongly enough about wanting or needing to do something, I just don't do it. I have a lot of important things that I want and need to do in 2025, like getting proof3 into the water. But in terms of fitness and wellness, I'm extremely simple, frankly, where, I mean, I do strength training, 4-ish days a week. I do aerobic training 3-4 days a week, and I try to eat not like an asshole, right? And then one of the best things that ever happened to, I would say, both me and my wife is that we got a dog who loves to walk. So that's taken care of. On the data side and the wearable side, I test almost everything. So I know kind of how all these different products are shaping up. But in terms of what I'm tracking, um, I don't need something at this point to tell me a lot of information about my sleep. I'm aware enough now to know if I'm doing what I need to do for sleep. So I don't pay a deep amount of attention to something like that. I pay general attention to if I'm trending in the right direction. Just to give you an example, right? Like, this is not an Aura right now. I think Aura is great. This is just a Kalo, rubber ring. I have an Apple Watch, and I do multiple things on the Apple Watch, but I spend a lot of time on Whoop. I spend a lot of time on Aura. I think they're both great. It's just not what I'm focused on right now.
It's almost like you've used wearables just to define or put numbers around the feeling, and now you're safe and squarely in the feeling of wellness and feeling where your body's at personally.
You ask awesome, awesome questions and make really good statements. That's exactly right. It's exactly right, which is, I believe, a big reason why fitness and wellness is so emotional. We know that at the end of the day, you will show up or not to something you feel good or not about. And so if I feel really good about the place I'm at, I'll probably show up more. And so if I needed to understand for a month what my daily step count is because I wasn't sure if I was active enough, great. Then I do a month test and I'm like, okay, I'm here. I want to be here. Let's go be there. And again, this is just for me. I don't tell myself that I'm going to do something unless I think it really matters. And that's just, I've just done this for a long time. That's what works for me. And a lot of people are very different. But I think I want to give people a lot of credit where it's like, I don't need to baby you forever. I need you to kind of have a basic understanding of how this works. And then I need you to love showing up. And then we'll make sure you're moving in the right direction. It takes a couple minutes a month. It's like, I don't need you to do more than that. Like, I don't want you to ask me 100 questions a month about nutrition if you're eating well. Now, if you want to be educated and you want to get like really smart about it, different conversation, if that matters a lot to you. But general fitness, it's like, let's help you get really aware. Let's help you really enjoy it. And, let's go about our day how we want.
The line between educated and obsessed is so crazy, especially in the wearable space where you just have all the numbers, and so you hyper focus on the numbers and you lose the connection to how am I feeling? Is this still fun? And I completely agree with you that like that's what it's all about, is like, is this fun? Is it sustainable? Is it a part of the day that I look forward to as opposed to a part of the day that I avoid?
Exactly. And I think that's why it's important to have people who have seen enough customers and members as on your team, because those principles will remain. Human beings will remain. There's just going to be different mediums by which we'll communicate with them, if it's in a gym or online or through a wearable. Some of the things that I've thought a lot about recently, one, Charlie Munger was almost 100 years old when he died, and big investor, if you guys don't know who he is. He didn't exercise much, but he had ridiculous purpose in his life. Ridiculous. And he loved what he did literally until the day that he died. I don't want to give you a fitness program if you hate the rest of your life. Just as if you love your life, but you're highly out of shape and unhealthy, It's like there's always going to be these ebbs and flows of how these things intertwine with one another. I think that's why fitness needs to be malleable to the person. But if there's one thing I know, if you want to be stronger and have more longevity, you need to do strength work and you need to do aerobic work and you need to eat decently well and you need to have fun with friends and you need to be a part of something you find purposeful. Like those things are never going to change. It's just the mediums to get people on that bandwagon are going to change. To your point on education and obsession, I've been really enjoying all the longevity discussion in the past year. And I think a lot of it is missing the 97% of what's most important, which is basic lifestyle guidelines mixed with good fitness and nutrition. You're not going to live to be 150 years old if you eat like shit and never move. I can promise you that. So I love the concept of longevity. It's like you got to earn the right to do the marginal things to get you 3 more good years at the end of your life. I think that is where you could meet a whole bunch of people. So that's how I've come to feel about that over a lot of years of looking at it.
And I think the entry point for people is so important. We talk about the 1% versus the 80% that's underachieving in their physical activity goals. And I think we as an industry have to be better about breaking things down into that simplest starting point so that somebody can make that move to like get off the couch and come in, whether it's to Proof3 or whatever other facility, like just get started on something. Yeah.
There's some really cool technology that's coming out that really attempts to make fitness joyful. Literally that word, like that's the founding mission of a particular company. And so I think you're going to see some cool 0 to 1 products that come out. And I think a whole bunch of people need 0 to 1 to feel confident enough to go 1 to 2.
And that's a whole part of the blue zones and where people live the longest. They're living joyful lives. They're doing things with their community. Yes, they have movement in their day, but it's not 45-minute HIIT classes. It's movement in their day. It's 10,000 steps. It's the approachable and accessible fitness levels. So you can have longevity without the obsession and without the going so hard that you end up not enjoying it. So I'll be anxious to see what you're referencing in the joyful approach to fitness, because I think that's definitely needed.
It's a cool one. And on the longevity piece, it's like I think this is pretty settled at this point. What's created the most longevity over the last 100 years? Cleaner hospitals, right? And so of course there's a whole bunch of new medical people. Like my mom is a great example. She's had cancer for the last 6 or 7 years, like pretty aggressive cancer. She would not be alive but for the treatments that are out there now. Those have added the most longevity, but quality of life is what the longevity folks are really looking for. So I think you're going to start to see sort of the breaking apart of health longevity and health span from a wellness standpoint. And, you and I are in the space in a very big way, but regular people are going to start to, well, I'm curious if you're seeing it too. I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of my friends not in this industry going, yeah, I want longevity and health span. I'm like, where'd you hear those terms? Because we hear them every day, but a lot of other folks don't. But those two things are different to me. And I think it's important to know the difference between hospital medical and wellness, like preventative. It's a big, important part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. I feel like I have 15 more questions for you that I have not gotten to, but in the interest of time, is there anything that's top of your mind that we have not talked about today?
I've been thinking a lot about duplicatable sales and marketing. So let me ask you a question, because this is your world. What do you think for new brands or existing brands, but like who really want to scale up? What do you think's the most important element or a couple of elements to earn the ability to sell easier?
I would say starting with a set of core values that are clearly communicated and lived by the leadership team. Because if you have aligned core values and you have a rock star who loves TikTok, great. Then those core values come to life through TikTok. If you have a rock star salesperson, but they understand your core values and what you're really trying to be, it's an easier sell because you know what you're selling. But I think it all starts with understanding who are we as a brand. And so if we're going to put energy out into the world our brand needs to carry that across whatever platform you're working on. And I think that's what a lot of companies miss, is they maybe try to be a lot of things to a lot of different people, and they have no sense of self. And so I think it is defining, who are we as a brand? What is our sense of self? And then looking at your team and saying, this is yours to bring to life, whether it's in sales or whether it's through a marketing channel.
I love how, I'm saying this in a positive way, I love how aggressive you are on trying new things on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Would you suggest that those founders or their sales team or marketing team go do that amount of testing, or is that potentially problematic?
Part of why I test is because I feel like if marketing's my jam, I have to know what each of the things is. So I play everywhere. There's so many different places you can play. And I think it's having self-awareness of, I like to write. Okay, then I'm going to play in Medium, and then I'm going to break that content down and post it on LinkedIn. Then I'm going to break that down further and post it on X. Or if you're the visual video person, that takes you on a completely different path. That takes you on a TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels kind of path. So I think it's just understanding, as a founder, you have to be somewhere, because it's the easiest way to communicate out about your brand and what you're working on without aggressive PR spending. So be your own PR and be somewhere, but you don't have to be everywhere. Pick your poison.
I also now have 15 more questions.
We'll come back and we'll do a round 2 at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. I've always thoroughly enjoyed our conversations.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think everything that you're doing is great. And I think how you show up online and for the industry is great. So from the fitness industry to you, thank you for being you and for sharing your what did you call yourself? Brick by brick boring? Thank you for sharing your brick by brick boring self with us in the fitness industry.
I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun. So thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.